There is a place that was once the center of the known world. Every bolt of Chinese silk, every Indian spice, every idea moving between east and west passed through a single crossroads. A lame warlord from a village no one had heard of built its greatest city from the ruins of conquered empires. His astronomers calculated the length of the solar year with an error of 58 seconds without a telescope. His architects raised domes so perfectly proportioned that the Mughal emperors later copied them to build the Taj Mahal. Then, the ocean replaced the road. And this entire civilization, its food, its science, its architecture, was quietly forgotten. Most people still cannot find it on a map. This is Uzbekistan. 4 cities, 1,000 years of history, and the food that carried it all forward. Tashkent. Tashkent begins before sunrise, not with traffic, with sound. Metal striking clay somewhere in the old quarter, the dull ring of a bread oven being loaded carrying through empty streets while the rest of the city is still asleep. By the time the sky starts to lighten, the first loaves are already done. You smell it long before you reach the entrance. Bread first warm and yeasty, with the faint char of a clay oven somewhere very close. Then cumin rising over it. Then smoke from charcoal grills that have been running since before dawn. You follow your nose through the gate, and the full picture arrives at once. Vendors calling across rows of stalls, a porter navigating the aisles with a loaded sack balanced on one shoulder, a grandmother arranging dried apricots by hand into careful pyramids while her granddaughter watches from a stool nearby. This is Chorsu Bazaar. The name means 4 paths in Persian. This exact spot was a Silk Road crossroads for 600 years, and on a Tuesday morning in the middle of the week, it feels like nothing much has changed. The bread bakers are the reason to arrive early. Lepeshka round flatbreads pressed by hand and baked against the inner wall of a clay tandoor come out still too hot to hold. The crust, underneath, is amber, faintly charred. The surface is soft and dimpled, scattered with sesame seeds. The warmth comes through the paper before you unwrap it. You eat it standing at the counter, and you don't plan for what comes next. Samsa next. The bread is still warm in your hand when the smell catches you. Spiced lamb and caramelized onion sealed inside a thin pastry shell. Baked hard in the tandoor until the outside shatters at the first press. A pocket of steam and fat releases with the first bite, sweet from the onion, fragrant with cumin, gone in 3 mouthfuls. You'll queue for another without thinking about it. And then there is the market's most honest dish. Kazy, horse meat sausage. The cure gives it a deep, savory intensity that sits at the back of the palate long after the first slice. The fat marbled through the meat, the flavor rich and unhurried. For 1,000 years, in the nomadic cultures that eventually built these cities, the horse was everything. Transport, protection, survival. Kazy is that world compressed into a few inches of sausage casing. Order it with the bread. Give it the respect of not rushing it. Before you leave the old quarter, one last stop, a chaikhana. The tea house. A small ceramic bowl arrives. The server pours, and immediately pours it back into the pot. Too weak. A second pour, returned again. The third pour stays. Choi, tea, 3 pours. 3 minutes. In a city that moves this fast, the tea house runs on its own clock entirely. The Silk Road ran on hospitality. A city's reputation for how it treated travelers determined whether caravans stopped. Uzbekistan absorbed that lesson completely, and you can still feel it in something as small as the patience of a pour. 300 kilometers south, the reason this country mattered reveals itself. Samarkand. The obvious thing to do in Samarkand is go to the Registan first. Most people do. The wiser thing is to start at Siab Bazaar while the city is still half asleep. The bread here is different. Samarkand has its own variety, wider and flatter than anywhere else in the country, marked at the center with a decorative stamp that goes back centuries. Locals say it tastes different because of the water, because of the wood burned in the tandoors, because of something that simply belongs to this city. People drive from Tashkent just to buy it. The bazaar sells 17 varieties. Bread is the warm-up. Find the plov. The ashpaz, the plov master, works his cast iron kazan over an open wood fire, and the process is unhurried and completely precise. First the oil, smoking hot in the iron. Then the onions, which arrive white and leave deep gold. their sweetness released slowly into the fat and filling the entire bazaar with something caramelized and warm. Then the lamb, pressed hard against the iron until the edges char. Then a cascade of yellow carrots matchstick thin that turn the whole pot amber within minutes. The rice goes in last, pressed flat over the top. The lid comes down. The oshbals steps back, folds his arms, waits. When he lifts the lid, the steam that escapes carries the whole dish before a single spoonful has been eaten. Rice perfumed with cumin and sweet carrot, the lamb buried beneath. Every grain soaked through with the fat from the cooking. A bowl costs less than $1. The recipe is older than most countries. UNESCO listed the culture of Uzbek plov as intangible cultural heritage of humanity in 2016, not for the recipe for what surrounds it. No wedding is real without plov. No funeral a proper farewell. Large-scale plov is always cooked by men, in public, over fire. The oshpaz holds genuine social status. His technique was passed by his teacher, who learned it from his. It travels like a name. The market behind you, you follow the old streets toward the city center. And then you turn a corner. Nothing prepares you for the Registan. 3 Islamic universities built between the 15th and 17th centuries, facing each other across a courtyard the size of a football pitch. The tilework lapis lazuli, turquoise. Gold is not painted. It is glazed tile, fired and placed by hand, piece by piece, over decades. Thousands of students once studied mathematics, astronomy, and law inside these walls. This was the medieval world's intellectual capital. It's Oxford. Except it was built first, and it looked like this. The Registan was designed to intimidate. 700 years later, it still works. Take a moment here. There is no need to rush toward the next fact. A short walk from the Registan, Gur-e-Amir, the mausoleum of Tamerlane, the man who made all of this possible. His armies killed an estimated 17 million people, 5% of the world's population at the time. Empires from Delhi to Damascus fell to him. He was not a conqueror who left things standing. And then he came home. He poured the wealth of a dozen conquered civilizations into Samarkand, into its libraries, its observatories, its universities, its art. The Timurid Renaissance that followed influenced the European Renaissance, happening simultaneously, an ocean away. Ideas moved along the Silk Road, in both directions. History does not often offer figures more impossible to hold in a single thought. Look at that turquoise dome, the ribbed shape, those proportions. Tamerlane's descendants, the Mughals, carried that architectural language east to India. One of them commissioned a monument to his wife. The Taj Mahal is a copy. The original is here, in Samarkand, and most of the world has never seen it. The road west from Samarkand moves through a different kind of light. The steppe stretches further. The pace, without realizing it, begins to slow. Bukhara does that before you arrive. Bukhara is older than Islam, older than Christianity. By the time Rome was building its empire, Bukhara was already a city with walls, a citadel, and merchants arriving from 3 directions. The old town absorbs you slowly. The streets narrow, the buildings lower, the noise of the road falling away until all that remains is the sound of your own footsteps on ancient stone. This is a city that has already seen everything. It moves accordingly. The Kalan minaret appears above the rooflines before you reach it. 47 meters of patterned brickwork, the geometric designs shifting at every level so the eye keeps moving upward. Built in 1127. When the Mongols swept through in 1220, burning the libraries, destroying the mosques, ending centuries of scholarship in a matter of days, Genghis Khan reportedly walked to the base of this minaret, looked up, and kept walking. He didn't touch it. One structure survived the annihilation of an entire city because it was too beautiful to destroy. It is still standing. Inside the 16th century covered bazaars, the Tox craftsmen still work under the same geometry that sheltered Silk Road merchants 5 centuries ago. The domes above them are self-supporting brickwork, built without iron or steel, held together by the mathematics of the arch alone. Nothing has been added, nothing needed to be. Bukhara's food is the most quietly surprising on this journey. A bamboo steamer arrives and is opened slowly, releasing a soft cloud of steam that catches the light in the room. Inside, manti, steamed dumplings whose skins are just thin enough to show the filling beneath. Press one gently and it yields the lamb inside fragrant with black pepper and slow-cooked onion. The cool sour cream alongside a proper contrast. The bite is delicate, nothing like the open fire stalls of Tashkent or the iron pot richness of Samarkand. Follow this dish east and it becomes Chinese jiaozi. Follow it west and it becomes Turkish mant. Manti is a culinary map of the entire Silk Road in a single bite, a direct line running from Xi'an to Istanbul, with Bukhara exactly in the middle. Order the dim lama alongside it. Slow-cooked lamb layered with potatoes, tomatoes, and onions in a sealed clay pot, left over low heat until everything yields the broth dark and deeply savory at the bottom, the lamb coming apart with a spoon. The vegetables absorbed into the whole. It is the taste of a city that knows how to wait. If you eat anywhere in Bukhara, eat in the old city. Sit outside if the evening allows. The tables that face the Liabi house the ancient pool at the heart of the old town have one of the more unreasonably beautiful views available for the price of a meal. Most of the world will never hear Bukhara's name. That seems like exactly the arrangement Bukhara would prefer. West of Bukhara, the desert takes over completely. The trees disappear. The horizon expands in every direction, and at the far end of the road, rising from nothing, the most intact medieval city in Central Asia is waiting. Khiva. The approach to Khiva is its own kind of arrival. The Kizilkum Desert comes first flat, vast, the color of old bone, stretching to every horizon with the indifference of something that was here before the cities and will be here long after. You drive through it long enough that the idea of walls begins to feel like something imagined. And then they appear. Ichin Kala, the inner walled city, still inhabited, barely changed in 500 years. From above, the entire plan is visible at once: the streets, the courtyards, the mosques, the spatial logic of a medieval Central Asian city, intact and readable from the air. The walls have stood since the 10th century. Step through the main gate and the silence is immediate. Not empty silence. The quiet of somewhere very old, where sound is absorbed by walls a meter thick and the light falls differently, always slightly golden from the way it reflects off the mud brick, always carrying the warmth of the desert even in the cool of early morning. At the heart of the city, a minaret stands like an interrupted thought. The Kalta Minor, started in 1851 by a Khan who commissioned it with one instruction: build it tall enough to see Bukhara from the top. Bukhara is 450 kilometers away. Nobody, apparently, raised an objection. He died before it was finished. Construction stopped. The minaret stands 26 meters high wide at the base. Its tilework exceptional. Its top simply stopped. No gradual taper. No final flourish. Just stopped. It has stood like this for 175 years. A monument to ambition that ran out of time. There is something unexpectedly moving about it. At the right hour late afternoon, when the light turns the walls to copper and the shadows stretch long across the courtyards, Khiva feels less like a city you've arrived in and more like a city you've half remembered from somewhere else. Something about its stillness doesn't quite belong to the present. Something cinematic about the way the light sits on the old brick. The food here reflects the desert it sits inside. Dried fruit and nuts, figs, pistachios, apricots slow-dried in the summer heat are arranged on low tables alongside tea, a spread that looks unchanged from what Silk Road travelers would have found after days crossing the Kizilkum. Dense bread, dried meat, everything preserved, everything portable. The food of survival made quietly generous. But there's one thing made in Khiva's kitchens each year that almost no one outside the region has ever witnessed. Sumalak. Once a year, around Nowruz, the Persian spring festival, women gather in the darkness around a large pot over a slow fire. Inside, wheat sprouts, water, and nothing else. No sugar, no shortcut. They take turns stirring through the night, singing as they go. The fire must not go out. The stirring cannot stop. And sometime in the 24th hour, after a full day and night of slow heat, the wheat releases its own natural sweetness. The paste sets. The singing stops. Dawn arrives over the walls. It is one of the oldest food rituals in Central Asia. Almost no one outside it has ever heard its name. Here is what happened to Uzbekistan. The trade routes shifted in the 15th century. The ocean replaced the road. The caravans that had made these four cities the most important crossroads on Earth simply stopped arriving. The cities quieted. The scholars moved. The empires dissolved into smaller ones, and then into history. The food did not forget. The bread pulled at 5 in the same clay oven. The plov master carrying his inherited recipe, his inherited fire, his inherited status as the man the neighborhood trusts with the most important meals of their lives. The women who sing through the night over a pot that will not give up its sweetness unless you refuse to hurry it. Food is how a civilization decides what it refuses to forget. The Silk Road is usually taught as a history of routes and goods and emperors, but trade is just people moving, and people, wherever they move, carry their food. Every spice in that Chorsu market was somebody's cargo once. Every dish on that Dastarkhan was somebody's home. The Silk Road didn't just connect economies. It connected tables. Uzbekistan was where those tables met. It still is.